August 17, 2008, Dhammasukha Meditation Center, Majjhima Nikaya, the Exposition of the Truths. Saccavibhanga Sutta, number 141, Bhante Vimalaramsi.
Okay, this is an exposition on the Four Noble Truths, and it gives a lot of definitions, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting. And it's one that I haven't given for a real long time. I don't think I've recorded it before, at least not recorded this way. Anyway, thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Benares in the deer park at Isipatana. There he addressed the monks thus. Monks, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this. At Benares, monks, in the deer park at Isipatana, the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, set rolling the matchless wheel of Dhamma, which cannot be stopped by any recluse or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahmin or anyone in the world. You know what can stop the Dhamma?
Nibbana.
No. Time. It only lasts for so long. This is the last surge towards the Buddha's actual teaching. From here on out, maybe for another 100 years it'll be surging forward, and then it's going to start declining and declining. And you see how it declines right now. You see an awful lot of people practicing all these weird things in the name of Buddhism. But it's no one person that causes it to dissolve. That is the announcing, teaching, describing, establishing, revealing, expounding, and exhibiting of the Four Noble Truths. That is, the Four Noble Truths are always here. But we don't recognize them unless a Buddha comes around and rediscovers them. That's what they do. They come around and they rediscover the Four Noble Truths. They don't discover the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths are always with us, but we ignore it.
It's sort of like, that's where the thing of basically the Dhamma precedes the Buddha in a sense.
Yes.
Comes from.
Yes. But it takes a Buddha to be able to recognize it. That's the one. The announcing, teaching, describing, establishing, revealing, expounding, and exhibiting of the noble truth of suffering. The announcing, teaching, describing, establishing, revealing, expounding, and exhibiting the noble truth of the origin of suffering, of the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, of the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. At Benares, monks, in the deer park at Isipatana, the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, set rolling the matchless wheel of Dhamma, which cannot be stopped by any recluse or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahmin or anyone in the world. That is the announcing, teaching, describing, establishing, revealing, expounding, and exhibiting of these Four Noble Truths. Cultivate the friendship of Sariputta and Moggallana monks. Associate with Sariputta and Moggallana. They are wise and helpful to their companions in the holy life. Sariputta is like a mother. Moggallana is like a nurse. Sariputta trains others for the fruit of stream entry. And he did that through speech, through his talking. He was second to the Buddha in wisdom. He really understood dependent origination. He could expound that so clearly that people would they would see it. And they would have the experience and then have the fruition of that experience. Moggallana is like a nurse. Moggallana for the supreme goal. So Sariputta got you to become a Sotapanna. Moggallana took you the rest of the way.
Looks like a little kangaroo rack to me.
Who is, but who, Sariputta monks is able to announce, teach, describe, establish, reveal, expound, and exhibit the Four Noble Truths. So the Blessed One said, having said this, the Sublime One rose from his seat and went into his dwelling. Then, soon after the Blessed One had gone, the Venerable Sariputta addressed the monks thus, Friends, monks, friend, the bhikkhus replied. The Venerable Sariputta replied to the Venerable Sariputta. I think it's better to put them in in the kennel for right now.
I don't know what he was barking in his back and front.
The Venerable Sariputta said this, At Benares, friends, in the deer park at Isipatana, the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, set the matchless wheel of Dhamma rolling and exhibiting the Four Noble Truths. Of what for? The announcing and exhibiting of the noble truth of suffering, of the noble truth of the origin of suffering, of the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, of the noble truth leading the way to the cessation of suffering. And what, friends, is the noble truth of suffering? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Not to obtain what one wants is suffering. In short, the five aggregates affected by clinging are suffering. Why? Why are the five aggregates affected by clinging suffering?
Because they arise and pass away due to conditions that are in our control. So that things that we want, we take it personally.
What is clinging?
The clinging is the stories and the identification.
And the concepts. And that's the main one. If you have the five aggregates not affected by clinging, there is no suffering. But when it's affected by your concepts, your opinions, your stories, your thinking about your imaginations, and your strong identification with those as being yours, that is suffering. And what, friends, is birth? The birth of beings into the various orders of beings, their coming to birth, precipitation in a womb, generation, manifestation of the aggregates, obtaining the basis for contact, that is called birth. Now this is a general thing. the Buddha also talked very specifically about all of these different things and how they relate to your practice. But it's not in this sutta. But it's a birth of action. And that you really don't want to go there, I can tell. It'll just be for a little while.
Huh?
It'll just be for a little while.
Well, he just a little energy.
The birth of action caused by your habitual tendencies. They always make you act in that particular way. And because there's birth, there's aging, and there's death of those actions. So that's how you get a little bit more specific when you're talking about the Four Noble Truths. But this is all fairly general. And what, friends, is aging? The aging of beings in the various orders of being, their old age, brokenness of teeth, grayness of hair, wrinkling of the skin, decline of life, weakness of the faculties. This is called aging. The five faculties. The weakening of the faculties is the weakening of the sense doors. Ergo. Didn't used to need these. And I was in Burma. And somebody wanted to buy me a pair of glasses. So I went in to get my eyes checked. And I had to go by bright lights to see, to read something. So I told them that. They checked my eyes and they said, do you want bifocals or reading glasses and regular glasses? Jeez. Don't hit me with that. Bifocals? No, just get me a regular pair of glasses for reading and the other glasses. But as I spent more time in Asia, I don't need the distance glasses anymore. I can see very fine without the distance. But the reading glasses are starting to be a necessity. I can still read without them as long as there's enough light. That's why I had to turn the lights up, because I can read, kind of, and what friends is deaf. See, I can read, but it's easier with reading glasses on. So, what we're talking about with aging is the decline and weakness of the faculties. Your hearing isn't quite as good, your seeing isn't quite as good. Although I met one monk that was 106 years old that needed no glasses, and he always read by candlelight. His monastery didn't have any electricity.
This guy was 106 years old.
106 years old.
Still
went out on alms round.
106.
Yeah. Right after I left, he came to Malaysia at this meditation center. There's the first floor was the administration. The next floor was where all of the monks and people that were doing their retreat, that's where they stayed. The next floor was the meditation center. This guy was running up and down the stairs like you can't believe. And he sits down and he says, okay, I'm going to give you a Dhamma talk. And he said, if you don't break any precepts ever, your body stays healthy. See? And then he ran down the stairs. But he would not allow anybody to help him. And he never touched the railing. It's amazing. He has since died. He died about, I think he was about 110. And he never needed glasses. He had a hearing. It was like unbelievable. Wow. But he impressed very much all of those Chinese that were listening to him. Breaking the precepts. Okay, we don't want to break the precepts. We want to live a long time. Okay, and what, friends, is death? The passing away of beings out of the various orders of beings. Their passing away, dissolution, disappearance, dying, completion of time. Dissolution of the aggregates, laying down of the body. That is called death. And what, friends, is sorrow? Sorrow, the sorrowing, the sorrowfulness, the inner sorrow, the inner sorriness. One who has encountered some misfortune or is affected by some painful state. This is called sorrow. Now, what's that rule about definitions? You can never use the word. You can't use the word that you're defining in the definition. Oops. What can you do? And what, friends, is lamentation? The wail and lament. Wailing and lamenting. Bewailing and lamentation. Of one who has encountered some misfortune or is affected by some painful state. In China, if you're close to one of their mortuaries, if you're rich and you die, then family goes out and they hire professional wailers. And boy, are they loud. And you think that they just lost their best friend in the world. They don't even know the guy that died. But they really put on a good show, I'll tell you. Big tears, everything.
You can get employment in that field?
Oh, yeah.
I might be able to do that.
Go to Singapore.
Wailing and lamentation. Huh?
Yeah.
Might be a way
But
to dump it out.
it's gotta be loud. I mean,
I can do it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh.
And then you have to get somebody with a piece of paper that gives you their name so you can look at it every now and then. Oh, I miss him so much. And what, friends, is pain? Bodily pain, bodily discomfort, painful, uncomfortable feeling born of bodily contact. This is called pain. And what, friends, is grief? Grief is mental pain, mental discomfort, painful, uncomfortable feeling born of mental contact.
Meditation?
No. This is like the real stuff, like the sadness, anxiety, fear, anger, all of those stuff, all of the stuff. And what, friends, is despair? All right, the trouble and despair. The tribulation and desperation of one who has encountered some misfortune or is affected by some painful state. This is called despair.
There's a pretty easy definition for the most part.
Yes, it is. And what, friends, is not to obtain what one wants is suffering. To being subject to birth, there comes the wish, oh, that there would be, that we were not subject to birth, that birth would not come to us. But this is not to be obtained by wishing, and not to be obtained by what one wants is suffering. To be subject to aging, subject to sickness, subject to death, subject to sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. There comes the wish, oh, that we were not subject to sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. That sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair would not come to us. But this is not to be obtained by wishing. And not to be obtained by one who wants not to obtain what one wants is suffering.
This just happens to everybody, man.
Oh, yeah.
So
Nobody's unique.
That's
We
why
all
we tell you
got-
there is suffering.
So it's just a thing. You
Yeah.
think it's
You think it's yours, and it's personal and all of that. It's not. Everybody's got it. Oh, honey.
what I'm always curious about is like when you think you've totally messed up your opportunity or whatever, and that's
painful.
but it just seems like, oh, that was really where I blew it. I just, and
Well, dwelling on it causes more pain. See, that thing in the morning that we read, he beat me,
you abuse me.
he abused me, defeated me, robbed me. If you hold those kind of thoughts, hatred is never appeased. So they're saying that you missed an opportunity, don't hold on to it.
Might actually work to your advantage.
It can work very much to your advantage unless you're holding on to it. When you're holding on to it, you're so much caught up in your thinking about what happened back there that you don't see the opportunities that come right here. And what, friends, are the 5 aggregates affected by clinging? That, in short, are suffering. They are the material form aggregate affected by clinging, the feeling aggregate affected by clinging, the perception aggregate affected by clinging, the formation aggregate affected by clinging, the consciousness aggregate affected by clinging. These are the 5 aggregates affected by clinging. That, in short, are suffering. This is called the noble truth of suffering. And what, friend, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering? It is craving, which brings renewal of being, is accompanied by delight and lust. It can also be accompanied by aversion and dislike. They never put that in, but it's always, you spend the same amount of time trying to hold on to something that you do try to pushing other things away. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, craving for non-being. Now, that as I started looking at this, I started seeing that this is actually talking about lust, hatred, and delusion, especially with the sensual pleasures. Sometimes you want them, sometimes you don't. That's the lust and the hatred. I want it, I don't want it. Right? And the delusion is the craving for non-being. Wanting to stop the identification but still identifying with it. Okay?
Could you read the 3 again? The sutta?
The craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, craving for non-being. Now this being in the dependent origination, this being is habitual tendencies that I call the habitual tendencies. But it's actually the being. The craving for being means wanting to get into the jhanas, and the craving for non-being means not wanting to be reborn. But that's really obscure. So I stick more with the sensual pleasures, and I call it habitual tendencies because that's what it really is. And I had some major arguments with Bhikkhu Bodhi about that. He said he didn't like that at all. And I said, then give me a better definition. And he just spouted off this. And I said, that's not a good definition. Give me a better definition. And he didn't. So I said, I'm sticking with habitual tendencies. Now, I had a long discussion with Venerable Usilananda before he died. And I said, I've been calling it habitual tendencies. What do you think of that? And he went through his Abhidhamma, and after a period of time he stopped and he said, yep, that's good. So that's what I'm going with.
So it's basically not putting rebirth so that you're not experiencing the suffering that you have currently in, basically, is what that's describing.
Yeah. This is called the noble truth of the origin of suffering. But remember, it is craving that brings the renewal of life.
Right.
It is the craving, the tension and tightness, that we have to be able to recognize right after the feeling arises. But also you have to be able to recognize it in all of the other links of dependent origination, because it's there, but it's real tiny. Because the Four Noble Truths are in each one of the links.
So, like, when there is the feeling that the craving for the habitual tendency of clinging.
Yeah.
No, when there...
Clinging is before the habitual tendency.
Yeah, but I'm trying to say that craving to continue the chain, is that the...
That's part of it too.
Because I've noticed that there's a habitual tendency to like to have pleasant thoughts and follow the chain with the tendencies.
But it's the subtle tension and tightness that you have to let go of. Now, arahats still have thoughts, but they don't have any craving ever arise in them. This is one of the real advantages of being around someone that has become an arahat, because they are clear. Now, you saw the kind of questions that you ask somebody that's an arahat, and you see the kind of answers that they will give if they in fact have that attainment. And there's an awful lot of people that have been meditating for awful lot of years. And they've been doing one-pointed concentration, and this happened during the time of the Buddha too. There was a lot of ascetics that had done really heavy-duty practice. And they went to the Buddha. And while the Buddha was talking, they did that. And all of a sudden, they're an arahat. Oh, you mean I was holding on to this little thing? Okay. And they would become arahats listening to him. But they did have to do that relaxed thing. Because they'd been holding on to that craving, and they couldn't figure out why they weren't able to have these other experiences that so many had during the time of the Buddha. You know, he couldn't walk around anywhere without 500 arahats following him. And even maybe soon I will pull out the Mahavagga and read you the story of what happened after he became enlightened. You know, right after his experience. And then how he started walking around. He went to the 5 monks, and then he walked around a little bit by himself. And he was starting to run into people, and all they had to do was he had to sit down and talk with them a little while. And they became arahats. And the first 60 people that he taught, no, that's not true. The reason I say that was some of the family members came around looking for the person that he was talking to, and they didn't become arahats. They became anagamis. But almost all of the people that he talked to at first became arahats. And then there were 60 of them, and they were all following him around, and he said, "Okay, monks, now everybody has to go in a different direction and teach the Dhamma." And then they would bounce back and forth, back to him every now and then. But it was real amazing to watch how fast everybody that had a little dust in their eyes, how fast they would just get it. And there was there's a story in the Mahavagga about the Buddha going to meet Mahakassapa. And he had 2 brothers. He had one brother that was a naked ascetic, I think. They call it matted hair ascetic. They never combed their hair. And he had 200 followers. And he had another brother that had 300 followers. And Mahakassapa had 500 followers. And the Buddha went to see Mahakassapa, and he performed, I think it's something like 2,500 miracles. And every time Mahakassapa would see the miracle, and he would say, that's very good, but he's not an arahat like I am. And finally the Buddha said, "No, you're not an arahat, listen to this." And he did, and became an arahat. As soon as he became an arahat, all his brothers became arahats. They all cut their hair off, and they threw it in the river. Now, first there was 500 arahats. They weren't arahats then. They were just ascetics. They shaved their hair, threw it in the river, went down the river. There's 300 ascetics there. They're looking at all this hair floating by, and they're going, "Wait a minute, what's happening here?" And before long, the Buddha with all these guys came down, and they said, "Well, if you're going to do it, we are too." And they shaved their hair and threw it in the water and went down to the other brother that had 200 ascetics. So he was walking around with these 1,000 ascetics that were really serious about practice and had been practicing one-pointed concentration. All they needed was the wisdoms of letting go of the craving and seeing dependent origination. And that's where the fire sermon came. And they all, with that one talk, they all became arahants. That's why I like that sutta. It's really a special one. Anyway. And what, friends, is a noble truth of the cessation of suffering? It is the remainderless fading away and ceasing, the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. What happens every time you do that? Letting go. Rejecting that tension and tightness. Now, the mistake that a lot of people make when they're talking about going to doing the breathing meditation is they say, I do feel very tranquil. And that's a misunderstanding of the Pali word called pasambaya. Pasambaya can be a noun, it can be a verb, it can be an adverb, it can be an adjective, depending on how it's used with the other words around it. In the instructions for the meditation, these three words tell you what pasambaya means. Pasambaya means tranquilize, basically. But it can be to tranquilize, am tranquilizing, I feel tranquilized. Or it means to tranquilize, an action verb. These three words in front of it tell you what that verb, means. He trains thus. It means you have an active part in tranquilizing. It's intentional, and it's not having your mind so focused that you are tranquilized, but you are continually tranquilizing on the in-breath and tranquilizing on the out-breath. Now that's for the breathing meditation. But what do I tell you? You practice the 6 R's. What are the 6 R's? Recognizing, releasing, relaxing, letting go of that craving, smiling, bringing up that wholesome object, keeping that wholesome object going. So it's a real important thing to realize. This is where Ajahn Brahm has kind of gone off the path, because he keeps on saying, you are tranquilized by doing this with a one-pointed mind. You feel the tranquilization. You feel tranquilized. And he's misunderstanding what pasambaya means.
I've also heard it taught where you just use aspiration to tranquilize instead of the relax.
Yeah.
That led to the tinnitus too.
Yeah. It does. One-pointed concentration can lead to all kinds of physical weirdnesses. There was one guy, when I first went to Malaysia, he wouldn't let anybody sit on a platform. Everybody had to sit down low on the floor because they were flipping over backwards. And they said, oh, that's part of the meditation. You're really doing good meditation when that happens. And I'm going, No, I'm not going to do that.
Were they just collapsing, or were they staying in their position?
No, they'd stay with their legs crossed and they would just flip over backwards.
Then would they get out of meditation then?
No, they stayed there. Then they'd get out of their meditation, saw they were on their back with their legs up in the air, like this. Oh, that must have been a good meditation. What kind of weirdness is that? There's another one where they start rolling around, and they will actually start yelling. And it takes 2 or 3 people to stop them from rolling around. But they think that's just great meditation. Boy, this is good stuff. It's kind of show-off stuff. Not really meditation. But there's all kinds of weird things that can happen with the one-pointed concentration that don't happen with this. The ringing in the ears can be horrid. It can really drive you crazy. The headaches that you get are massive. I practiced the one-pointed concentration with the Vipassana. I got to a certain place that it felt like somebody took a needle that was about that long, that was red hot, and just stuck it right there. It was so intense. It was like you bang your head real hard and tears come down. You're not really crying, but there's tears coming. That's what was happening to me. It was so intense, it was unbelievable. And of course, everybody's going, oh, you really got good meditation. And I'm going, I don't like this. This hurts. But those are signs of the one-pointed concentration. And the reason that headache occurs is because the force of the concentration is suppressing the hindrances, stopping the hindrances from coming up. And you get these big headaches. And it'll last for a period of time. I think mine lasted about 2 weeks. Then it went away. Then I had other stuff that was really weird happening that I'm not going to talk about. It's not worth it. But the one-pointed concentration is really intense in some ways. But when you let go of the craving, there's that feeling of expansion in your mind. There's a clarity of mind. There's purity of mind because there is no craving. This is where mind's eye actually arises, that wisdom eye. And this is really a good thing. And as you go deeper in your meditation, you start sitting for longer and longer periods of time without having any disturbance at all. Your mind is exceptionally pure and bright. Your mindfulness is in balance with your concentration. A noise can happen. Doesn't even, it just kind of goes right on through. It's nothing. When the concentration is out of balance, that's when it boinks you. That's when you have the dislike. When I was doing the Vipassana, the teacher was continually telling us in the Dhamma talks that sound is a thorn in the side of a meditator. So be very quiet. So we go in there and we're really quiet. And this Burmese guy comes in and sits down right beside you and starts belching. And passing gas. And they're there for a little while and they talk to their friend. I mean, I had to get real balanced with that. I had to have that balance of the concentration and the mindfulness, not to get upset and poke them in the nose. You know. But I've been to meditation retreats in this country where someone complained because somebody turned a fan on. Now this is 95 degrees and there's no movement of air in the room at all, and there's 40 or 45 people in the room. And they complained because somebody turned the fan on. Oh, the noise, it bothers me. Well, guess who's out of balance? And there was all kinds of complaints of, don't use this door because it squeaks. And there's all kinds of nonsense like that. You notice how much we pay attention to that around here. Okay. And what, friends, is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering? It is just this noble eightfold path that is harmonious perspective, harmonious imaging, harmonious communication, harmonious movement, harmonious lifestyle, harmonious practice, harmonious observation, and harmonious collectiveness. Every time you practice the 6 R's, you are practicing the entire Eightfold Path. Harmonious perspective means that you see that everything is part of an impersonal process. When you 6R it, you see that it's an impersonal process. As your mind becomes more quiet, the imaging becomes more wholesome and uplifted. And then you start having images of the radiation coming out and the feeling of that. That's what we're talking about. The harmonious communication is being in harmony with your own thoughts and feelings. And everybody else around you. But it's the harmonious communication mostly with yourself. As you relax more and stop getting involved with thoughts and feelings, eventually those thoughts and feelings will start fading away. When they fade away, your mind stays on the object of meditation longer. This is a wholesome image. A lot of people, I give talks in Cape Girardeau. A lot of people there are very much involved in the Hawaiian type magic. They call it huna. And a lot of the people hold an image of being poor. When they think of themselves, they think of themselves as not having. So I keep on asking them over and over again, what kind of image are you holding for yourself? Are you holding an image of abundant wealth? Or are you holding an image of poverty? It doesn't mean that you don't have to do actions to have that abundant wealth coming. You do. It's not just holding the image, but it's holding the image and having action behind that image. So the more you hold an image of being prosperous, the more you hold an image of being clear in your mind, the more you hold an image of having a happy mind, what does the universe bring to you? So harmonious imaging is real important. They call it right thought, and that's just not it. It's the image that you hold. And somehow the image of having a lot of socks got stuck in me. Such is life. Anyway, the harmonious communication is the communication you have with yourself about yourself. And if you're holding negative thoughts about yourself, then that changes the harmonious imaging to unharmonious imaging. So it's real necessary to see, one, that everything is impersonal. And the kind of image you hold and the kind of communication you have with yourself. As you learn to see everything as an impersonal process, your image of yourself changes and your communication with yourself starts to change. This is one of the brilliant things about the practice of metta, because it helps you to change your image. And you start to see all kinds of miracles happen around you when you practice metta. You'll see when you go home, you'll see these miracles and they'll blow your mind. So the more you can practice the loving kindness, the better your communication is with yourself and everyone else around you. Harmonious movement means not jerking your mind around, not getting involved in controlling and squeezing your mind, being in harmony with your movement. The 6 R's, you roll your arms. It's recognize, release, relax, smile, come back. Gently. You're not using the 6 R's as some kind of a stick to beat things away. You're not doing it as a control. You're doing it as an allowing. And the metta is really helpful for this too, but I've known people that have tried to use metta as a stick to make things happen the way they want them to. They try to beat things into happening. It doesn't work when you do that. It works when your mind is just focusing on loving kindness and radiating that feeling around you. Not to make something happen in a particular way. And that's when you start to see the miracles happen. The harmonious lifestyle, what kind of things do you put in front of your mind? This is always the time that I tell the story about the lady that had bad dreams. She came to me and told me that she was having bad dreams. I'll tell you another dream story in a minute. And I asked her why, and she was going to horror movies, scaring the heck out of herself. So she was having bad dreams. I said, well, don't go to those movies anymore. But I like to go to those movies. Well, don't complain to me about it.
A bad dream.
I was in Malaysia, and there was a period of about 6 weeks that complete strangers, people I had never seen before, started having dreams about me. And then I would show up to where they were. And they'd come and tell me about this. And I was really getting confused about it. I had no idea why it was happening. So I went to this senior monk. I mean, he's a 50-year monk. He's really, really a good monk. And I said, you know, the strangest thing, people are having dreams about me before they see me, and they see me in their dreams. And I have no idea what this is about. And he said, oh, it's just their bad dreams.
No.
Nothing. They're having nightmares. But it was weird. It happened for about 6 weeks. And there was other weird things that were happening too. When I was in Burma, there was a period of, it was almost a week, it was like 6 days or so, I didn't have to touch a door to open it. You know, I'd just walk up to the door and the door would open. There wouldn't be anybody around. Sometimes it was a gust of wind. It was really weird. And I started telling all the other monks, I said, I don't have to touch the doors to get out. And they're going, oh, yeah. And I'd walk up to a door, it would open up, and they'd go, wow. I have no idea why that happened or why it stopped happening. But it was strange, I'll give it that.
What were your dreams like in that 6-week period?
I didn't have any dreams that I could remember. I was sitting a lot. When you sit a lot, at least when I sit a lot, I have no dreams at all. Just sleep, wake up, and go do some more. Okay, so we got to right livelihood. Well, then we have harmonious practice, which is the 6 R's. Recognizing an unwholesome state, letting go of that unwholesome state and relaxing. Smiling, bringing up that wholesome state of your object of meditation, staying with that object of meditation. That's right, our harmonious practice. And the 6 R's are the easiest way to remember to do that. And the 6 R's are how to meditate. It doesn't matter if it's a little tiny blip that happens or something grabs your mind and really grabs a hold of it. It doesn't matter. You treat it in the same way. The 6 R everything. Sometimes some thoughts are going to keep coming back over and over again. That's okay. 6 R it. Relax into it. It's just your mind running around doing what it always did before. As you 6 R it, you start training your mind to let go of those kind of things. And then you don't have your habitual tendency to grab on and trying to control. That leads to happiness. Then you have harmonious observation. Observing how mind's attention moves from one thing to another. The sharper your observation becomes, the more subtle the things you are that you see. Does that make sense? Now this is one of the enlightenment factors, and this is an important one. There's always room to improve your mindfulness, your observation. You can see things. As you go deeper into your meditation, you start seeing things that are little tiny you never would have seen before. But now you see them, and they can actually seem very big and almost overpowering. But actually it's just this little tiny thing. It's just that you're able to see it so closely and so well that it seems big.
Almost like it's magnified.
Yeah. And that's what happens with the hindrances. When you first start out doing your practice, a hindrance comes, just bowls you over for a period of time. As you get better at recognizing and letting go and relaxing and doing all of the 6 R's, the hindrance looks like it stays the same. But it's actually much smaller than it was when you first started out. And the hindrances are a necessary part of the practice. As much as we don't like to think that, they help you because they're showing you where your attachments are, so you can let them go. Then we have collectedness, which is always defined in the suttas as being the 4 jhanas. Always defined that way. Commentaries will say Kanika Samadhi and Upachara Samadhi, access concentration and moment-to-moment concentration. There is no right concentration with access concentration or moment-to-moment concentration, according to the suttas. It's only the first 4 jhanas. Now the 4th jhana has 4 different aspects of it, and they're subtler, but it's still the 4 jhanas. So that includes both the rupa and the arupa jhanas. And what, friends, is harmonious perspective? Knowledge of suffering, knowledge of the origin of suffering, knowledge of the cessation of suffering, knowledge of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called harmonious perspective. Now, knowledge of the 4 Noble Truths in dependent origination. That's what we're really talking about here. Again, we're talking real generally, but and what, friends, is harmonious imaging? Now here the definition, what they used as a translation is right intention. And in a way it's not bad, but it's kind of misleading at the same time. You have to intend to have an image and hold an image to have that image be there. So yeah, you could call it that. But intention by most people's standard is much different. And yeah. So intention of renunciation, intention of non-ill will, intention of non-cruelty. This is called right intention. Now, the intention of non-ill will is loving kindness. The intention of non-cruelty is compassion. So holding those images of loving kindness and compassion is what we're talking about. And renunciation, so the renunciation of unwholesome states and letting them go, not getting involved in it. And what, friends, is harmonious communication? And this is really, really general. It says abstaining from false speech, abstaining from malicious speech, abstaining from harsh speech, abstaining from idle chatter. This is general again. It's not talking about the harmonious communication with yourself that I'm telling you about. And what, friends, is harmonious movement? Abstaining from killing living beings, abstaining from taking what is not given, abstaining from sexual misconduct. This is called right or harmonious or They call it right action. I call it harmonious movement. Now, what do these three things have to do with you while you're sitting in meditation? Don't kill anything, don't steal anything, don't have any wrong sexual activity. What? What does that mean? You see how that doesn't really apply to the meditation. This is commentarial, actually. But when you're talking about the harmonious movement and gentle movements of mind, now this makes sense. And what, friends, is right livelihood or harmonious lifestyle? Here a noble disciple, having abandoned wrong livelihood, earns his living by right livelihood. This is called right livelihood. What does that have to do with meditation? Not a thing. And in other places it'll tell you flat out that can't sell any firearms, no poisons, can't sell slaves. Now that's really a rough one.
Not supposed to pimp.
Yeah, no pimping. What did that have to do? Now this is something that the Buddha spent a lot of time in the first Dhamma talk. He gave this Dhamma talk to 5 ascetics that were incredibly virtuous. What does this have to do with them? Selling firearms? Poisons? Slaves? They're ascetics. It doesn't make sense. See? That's why the harmonious lifestyle of what you're putting in front of you. And also keeping your precepts. That's another aspect of the harmonious lifestyle. Without breaking them. I always got a kick out of that guy that said, okay, you convince me, I'll keep the precepts. How long do I have to do that? I always got a kick out of that. Made me crack up. Oh, we'll start at 100 years. Once you reach then, if you're still living, going strong, we'll tack on another 50 or 100 or 100 lifetimes. And what, friends, is right effort? Here a monk awakens enthusiasm for the non-arising of unarisen wholesome states. And he makes effort, arouses energy, exerts his mind, and strives. He awakens enthusiasm for abandoning the arisen unwholesome, evil and wholesome states. He awakens the enthusiasm for the arising of unarisen wholesome states. See what I was saying? Unwholesome states, recognize them, let go of the unwholesome states, relax. Bring up the wholesome state, re-smile, come to your object of meditation, stay with your object of meditation. That's what we're talking about with right effort. It's 4 aspects.
If one was practicing like the breath meditation, what would the wholesome just
Your object of meditation.
I see.
But also, when I teach mindfulness of breathing, I teach smiling too.
The metta seems to have the right imaging built into it.
Yeah.
And so do you talk about attitude as, trying to be happy while you're doing the mindfulness of breathing, or just with the smile and the...
Smiling. When you have a smile in your mind when you're doing mindfulness of breathing, your mind is so clear and so alert. And then when you don't, it's like you're walking in the mud. You don't see things very well. So the smile is a real important aspect. really is. And it has to be, you have to remind people over and over and over and over and over again. That's why I go around scaring you every night. Boo. Make you laugh. He awakens enthusiasm for the continuance, non-disappearance, strengthening, increase, and fulfillment by development of arisen wholesome states. And he makes effort, arouses energy, exerts mind, and strives. This is called right effort. Staying on your object of meditation. That's what it's talking about. For as long as you can. Now the trick is, you want to be able to recognize when there's just little tiny movements of mind, and 6 are those. Don't wait for them to get up and grab a hold of you. Sharpen your mindfulness enough so you can start seeing that. And then you'll start doing this. And then it'll start fluttering away. By that time you're really caught. So you want to try to improve your mindfulness without putting too much energy into it. I used to play baseball, and I used to be a catcher. And there was this one guy that he was one of the best knuckleball pitchers going. And when you throw a knuckleball, nobody, including the pitcher, has no idea what's going to happen. The ball will come up and it'll go down like that, or it'll come up and it'll go like that, or it just moves in all kinds of weird ways. Now, to be a catcher, and the way that I did it at first, I was tense, and I was ready to jump on it. And I found out that I missed it a lot of the time. I couldn't catch that thing. Somebody told me you had to relax. And what I did was I relaxed, and then instead of being ready to pounce on it, I would just see it and let my reflexes take care of it. I turned out to be a great knuckleball catcher because of that. When you're trying too hard to see this, you're tense. It has to be a natural observation and seeing it and relaxing. Let your intuition work with it. Okay. And what, friends, is right mindfulness? Here a monk abides contemplating body as body, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating feeling as feeling, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating mind as mind. He abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects. This is called right mindfulness. So it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And what, friends, is harmonious collectiveness? Here, quite secluded from sensual pleasures. You know this one? Have you heard it before? Secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thinking and examining thought with joy and happiness born of seclusion. With the stilling of thinking and examining thought, he enters upon and abides in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and stillness of mind without thinking and examining thought, with joy and happiness born of collectedness. With the fading away as well of joy, he enters He abides in equanimity and mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body. He enters upon and abides in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce, he has a pleasant abiding who has equanimity and is mindful. And that is really a true statement, isn't it? You get into the third jhana, you have this equanimity and your mind is nice. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, he enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. This is called harmonious collectiveness. It's the four jhanas. That's what it's talking about. Commentaries will tell you you can have that access concentration and the momentary concentration. That's the same thing as a jhana. Whoops. I think not. This is called the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. At Benares, friends, in the deer park at Exposition, the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, set rolling the matchless wheel of Dhamma, which cannot be stopped by any recluse or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahmin or anyone in the world. That is the announcing, teaching, describing, establishing, revealing, expounding, and exhibiting of these Four Noble Truths. That is what the Venerable Sariputta said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Sariputta's words. So there you have the Four Noble Truths. You know what they are now? Got it memorized?
There's suffering.
Okay. And?
There's cessation of suffering.
Before that, there's the origin of suffering, remember?
I don't have them memorized.
There's the cause of suffering.
There's cause of suffering.
The cessation of suffering.
There's a way
leading to the cessation. And smiling is one of those ways. You're practicing the whole Eightfold Path when you're smiling. You have that uplifted mind. It's really important to practice that as much as you can. So, now you know what the Eightfold Path is. Why not go practice it? Okay? So don't be attached to sleep for an idea that you have to have so many hours of sleep. Because there's sometimes you just don't need it. Your mindfulness is so sharp and your mind is so alert. It might be the next day you might need some. But not while your mindfulness is really sharp. So don't be attached to, I've got to have this many hours of sleep. Quite often I go to bed at 1:30 or 2 o'clock and get up at 5:30. I'm not tired. I get up at 5. Unless there happens to be a cat in my cootie, and then I get up at 3.
Cats in the cootie.
Cats in the cootie. That's worse than a cat in the hat.
Cats in the cradle.
Why don't we share some merit? The suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearlessly. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space of earth, devas and arms and mighty powers share this merit. May they long protect Buddhist dispensations.